Alrighty, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We've got quite a bit to get through, as is usually the agenda, but the agenda is a little bit longer today. So we've got a good number of people online. So thank you for being on time, and let's get started so we can get through quite a bit to do today. So our agenda for today is as published, but just to recap, we wanted to introduce you to Blocks, the latest innovation from the Eloqua team, along with some additional enhancements to the design editors. We'll look at some updates to a number of the different apps as well, which could be of interest to you. And given the large volume of webinars that most of us are doing at the moment, it's probably worthwhile to have a look at how we can best utilize those webinar replays. Now, we use Zoom at Marketing Cube. In the past, we've used ReadyTalk, and we know many of you obviously use products like On24, GoToWebinar, WebEx, etc. Fundamentally, it's all the same, by the way. So we'll cover all of that for you. We then wanted to introduce you to a new webinar series that we wanted to give you a little bit of brief insight into, called The Art of What's Possible, and explain what that's about. And then we'll go into updates, but there really aren't any updates, so to speak, because we're really going to be talking about most of those updates that just took place over the last couple of weeks. But just in general housekeeping, as is usually the case, the webinar is being recorded, and all questions submitted via the Q&A, and we'd encourage you to use the Q&A feature, not the chat function. The Q&A feature means that your questions are then visible to the rest of the team, and all attendees can then upvote them. So that sort of makes the collaboration a little bit easier as well. If you do have a specific question, though, that you'd rather not be published or be public, please go ahead and use the chat function. So my name is Derek Bell. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing here at Marketing Cube. We have Jason O'Donnell, our Account Director, on the line, as well as Matt Hemsley, our Marketing Manager. So both Jason and Matt will be helping manage the Q&A and the chat function as well. So please, if you do have questions, make sure you shoot those through. As is typically the case, we provide customers with an opportunity to submit a question when they register, so thank you. It's a great question, and I think it probably is worthwhile sharing with everybody. So I'm not sure if Liz specifically was referring to Blocks as in the new functionality with Eloqua, but let's jump in and have a look at some answers to this question and give you some ways to look at this information. The best report to look at is probably the Email Analysis Overview Insight report. So that's a report that you'll find in Insight, but there could be some merit to actually starting that process using the dashboards from within Eloqua, because you can then, from the dashboards, click through to have a look at the Insight reports, and sometimes it's a little bit easier to do it that way. So you can see the metrics there that it provides, the date range or a time frame, all of the emails that happened within that period, bounce backs, numbers sent, opens, unique opens, clicks, and there's loads more data that you can see. But the final bullet point potentially plays out to Liz's question. Because you can view multiple emails in the report, it becomes a good way to have a look at your more high-performing content. So let's have a look at one way to do it. So the first thing we would suggest is that you potentially jump in and have a look at the dashboard. So dashboards are available through the reporting menu items. So you've got in there, you've got Insight and dashboards. So I've come and had a look at the email analysis dashboard in this example. So what I've done there is adjust the date parameters that you can see here. So I've done the last 12 months essentially. It's divided by email group, and there's this huge mix of colors over here. Now I can reduce these email sends in this graph by changing the selection of the different email groups. So you can see that the user group is obviously our biggest campaign that we run on an annual basis to the largest number of people, followed by events. Product insight and reviews for us is sort of lead gen type stuff, and then it sort of filters down from there. But you can hover over these to gain some insight into individual assets, and you can zoom in as well just by using your mouse to click and zoom in. So you've got loads of options there. If you scroll down on that dashboard, you then arrive at the email activity timeline, and that's the date range that you can see there. and it's also divided by email groups. So I'm able to hover over this. As you can see, I've hovered in this screen grab, and you can see that in March of 20, we've had considerable outgoings, which you would appreciate. I think most of you probably have similar activity in your own Eloqua instances, but it certainly gives you an idea or a way to look back at campaign volume and get a little bit of an idea of how busy it's been and the type of content that you've been sending. Of course, that would be based on your use of email groups, as you can see here. Now you can filter this information. At the moment, I've got it divided by month, but you can also click on day, month, quarter, or year, should you want to divide that information up. Now, if you scroll down further to the bottom of the dashboard, you then see all of the detail. So these are now the individual emails that make up that particular report that we see at the top. I mentioned earlier that you can actually jump straight from the dashboard into Insight, and you may or may not have noticed the report details link that's located here in the top right-hand corner. So by clicking on the report details link, that then takes you straight into Insight, without you having to filter anything or provide any parameters, because you've already provided all of those parameters in the dashboard. And so here it gives you a breakdown of unique open rates, et cetera, total sends, and you can adjust those columns based on which one you want to have at the top. So there's good flexibility there. Okay, so if we come back to the dashboard though, so we've now left Insight, come back to the dashboard, we clicked on the report details link over here on the right-hand side. But if you wanted to actually now have a look at an individual asset to try and work out why potentially it's performing as well as it did, these are all hyperlinks. So all of these email names you can click on, and then once you click on those, you're taken to a new dashboard, which is now looking at one single asset. And so when you're here, you'll see the details that range for that particular asset. Now, if that asset has only ever been used once, then that's fine. That's all you'll see. But if it's been used in multiple campaigns, then you'll see overall or lifetime value performance of that particular asset. Now you've got three tabs here. The default is email performance, which is what you see on the screen right now, broken down by segments. Then you can also look at link activity and also click map. So you can jump through and have a look at that click map and get a better idea as to which part of those emails are performing. What are people actually clicking on in those particular assets? So Liz, hopefully that answers your question, and I think that's hopefully value to most people as well. Oracle have been working on this for close to 12 months, and we first heard about it in Las Vegas last year. Remember when you used to be able to fly internationally and go to big trade shows? Well, we went to the show in Vegas last year, and the team there sort of gave us a sneak peek as to what this thing was going to be called content blocks. So then about 2.5 months ago, one of our customers, the University of Auckland, were able to receive beta access because Oracle were keen to have a look at some higher education use cases, which they weren't able to get out of the US. So it was awesome that the team at the University of Auckland were able to participate. So after playing with content blocks for quite a while, Dan, who is their marketing automation specialist over there, came back to us with this statement, which I just thought was really cool. It's always great to get these types of comments and feedback from customers, but just to give you some insight from a customer's point of view or an Eloqua user's point of view, exactly what blocks will do for them. In the context of that, let's have a jump in and have a closer look at what blocks are, and then we'll have a look at Eloqua itself as well. Okay. So what are content blocks? So the first thing is to realize that as of last week with release 20B, all customers have access to blocks within the email and landing page editor. So what are they? They're essentially pre-styled blocks in the design editors. So in both email and landing page. And blocks can be a combination of things, right? So you can bring together text, images, and importantly, dynamic and shared content as well. You can easily save them, create reusable blocks from your existing responsive templates and more. So even if you've got templates that you have today or even emails that you have today, that there are sections of those emails that you would love to be able to repeat easily without having to build them each time, or end up with a template that has like 25 different options in it. You can use blocks to save time and also to control from a brand point of view. Some of the benefits essentially of using them would be that you can do things quickly, which is going to be one of the key requirements I think that most of us have. Then you can build, manage and use blocks without any coding knowledge. So this is an entirely HTML-free experience. So that's a plus for everybody. It also gives you greater flexibility when building content, and potentially the expectation is that we may reduce the need for large libraries of templates. So we'll show you exactly what that looks like. So there is a question there from Patricia. So Patricia, the answer to your question is yes. Patricia asked the question, can we download as, oh, well, actually, let me rephrase. You said, can we download as PDF the dashboard with the heat map shown before? You can download it as a PNG file, or of course you can just do a screen grab using your operating system as well. But there is a little icon with an arrow next to each of those on the dashboard, and if you click on that, it'll just give you a PNG file in your download folder. So you're ready to rock and roll. Okay. Let's jump in and have a look at blocks. So what we have here is a landing page that I put together just recently for our friends at the University of Auckland, as you can see. And the reason I've chosen this is because there are a number of functions here in this particular page that really play well into what we're talking about today. So first thing is, where do I find blocks? Well, blocks are found here on the left-hand side with the menu. And at this stage, we have one block built into our landing page. We have multiple blocks built into emails so far. And so let me open one of those for you so you can see that as well. The key question that most people have when they first start playing is, well, that's fine, but how do I actually build the block? So you build the block by building it in the editor itself. So you open up an email, you can start with a blank email if you want, or go to an existing template. And you'll see here in just a moment what that looks like and how easily they are to create. So here's our block menu contained within the email, and most of you would have received this particular email this week. And so you can see we've got like a 3-column option to drop in, a call to action to subscribe to important updates for Eloqua users, and then kind of our three main services that we offer at Marketing Cube. So for consistency, it just makes it easier to be able to drop that in. But let me come back to our landing page example, because I want to show you a few bits and pieces here. So as you start to build things, you'll notice when you click on any part of an email or a landing page, the same experience, you've either got content, and the content is outlined by this bluish or purple outline. However, if you hover slightly further out to the left or right, you then access the layout portion of the editor. Now, most importantly, over here on the right-hand side, you'll see 3 icons. Now, you'll be familiar with the trash icon. There's the duplicate icon, and there's also the now, this is how you create your content, is the block icon. So in this particular example, we've done a few different things to make this process a little bit easier. But let me have a look. Now, this is actually live, this page, but that's fine. The team at Auckland University won't mind. I can just drag that in, and there it is. So it's all pre-configured. The links are all sitting there. It's all done as per normal, and I can adjust it as I want to. Now, the key thing that is different to shared content is that any changes that I make now to these 3 columns and this content is now unique to this landing page. So unlike shared content is always a master. So you have a library where your shared content rests, and when you add shared content to either an email or a landing page, it's always connected to the main library or the master. The difference with blocks is that as soon as I drop this block in here, it's now completely severed from the library. So any changes I make are unique to this page. one of the important points that came up during the beta testing period was in relation to the links and the tracking behind those links. So as soon as I drag the block into my email or my landing page, those tracking codes that popped in sitting behind your URLs are then severed and added and are unique to this particular email or this landing page. Simple as that, pretty much. Now, how have we actually gone about and built the blocks? So what we found initially was that we would go to existing emails, have a look at emails that we do on a regular basis, etc. And then we found, well, that was a bit too specific. So what we actually started to do, we built out some emails, and what we've done, just to make them easy to find, while they've all got names, we've put HTML at the front of them, and that just makes it so. These are emails that we never planned to actually send. These are we're just building pieces to go into various campaigns. So let me show you what I mean. So in this particular example, this was a call to action, I think, to let's have a look. Yeah, no, this was for this was actually for some dynamic content. This is the export to HTML function is probably a better example. But you can see here, the options here appear now. So I can add to block, for instance, and I can then manipulate and change that around, and then I can export the whole thing. So if I click on that, I can then create a block name, give it a name, and then add it to the block library. So if we go to the block library here, you'll notice so once you've then saved it to the block library, when you click on edit, there's now an entire area that you can play with. Now, one of the nice things you'll notice, you can actually have up to 3 layout sections involved in each area. So I can bring in another image if I want to. I can add shared content spaces. I can drop in text. Signatures, I still got custom code, dynamic content. You can keep playing around with those and edit them. Now, who can edit blocks and who can create blocks? So at the moment, by default, the administrator of your instance has the ability to create blocks and to also edit blocks. Now, there is a very specific section, the user profile area, that your administrator can give you block edit and creation capabilities. So for most of your users, it may be that they'll just simply go to the block library and drop them in, but it's probably worthwhile to have somebody or probably a couple of people in the team who manage the block library and keep that up to date and refreshed, remove old blocks potentially, especially if those blocks are very specific to an upcoming event or campaign or anything like that. So you can make those changes should you need to. Now you'll notice when I hover here, I've got 1, 2, 3 layout sections. That's the maximum number of layout sections you can have in a block. Okay, so if you wanted to go from 1 column to 2 columns to 3 columns and have that as a single block, you would do that here. But don't get confused like I did initially, because when I came here, so here I'm building out my content and I want to try and add here, this is 1 column and this one is 2 columns, but there's no way for me to, I can only add 1 block at a time. So what you do is you basically start here essentially, add that, save it as a block, and then when you get into the block editor itself, that's where you can then add, and see if I can find an example. Cancel, save, just got to save before I can leave. Now we have a blog post on our website. If you go to our blog, there's a blog there that goes into quite a bit of detail around blocks. I'd encourage you to have a close look at that. There's some short videos there, links to the help center, and also just some ideas for you to think through in relation to how you might use blocks at your organization as well. So Kate says, so do we need to have landing page blocks and email blocks, or is the block library available across both asset types? Great question, thank you. So that's Kate. Let's have a look, Kate. So once you've created depends where you create your block. So if you create your block in an email and then add it to the block library, it's then in your email block library. If you create a block in the landing page and then add it to the library, it's then in your landing page library. But once you move into the edit function, you can see here there's an option. So block appears in email, landing page, or both. Now remember, the content you're creating is responsive, so it could rest in either one potentially. But you just want to think through what that's going to look like when it gets dropped in as an individual block. So hopefully that answers your question. Colette asks, will the forward function improve with blocks? When recipients forward our emails onto, say, a student, the template distorts terribly. An Outlook problem possibly, but wondering how we might improve. That one's a bit of a challenge, Colette. I'm not sure if blocks will have any impact on that necessarily. It really does depend on email clients, has been my experience. And by that I mean, is it Gmail, Outlook, Apple Mail, et cetera, et cetera. So, but I'm not sure that blocks will necessarily have any direct impact on potentially improving that. Remy says, what is the difference between blocks and shared content? Yeah, Remy, great question. So I'm going to dive into shared content here in just a minute to cover that off, because that example I've got, that's why I chose that, that page that we put together for the University of Auckland, because that's got various pieces on it. So let me explain that in a bit more detail for you. So if I have a look at this particular landing page, so this is a template. So if I go to my landing pages, let me go back, let me go to landing pages, and I click on create a landing page. I think it's sitting here. It is coaching webinar replay. I hit choose. Actually, let me just go back to our slides for a second, because this does now take us into some of the other enhancements, and I'm probably getting ahead of myself slightly. All right, so in addition to blocks, there are 4 other key enhancements that have taken place, a couple of which are what we call controlled availability, meaning that you generally need to log a service request to Oracle to request that particular beta function be added to your instance, and others are generally available, or GA is the term they use. And so things like blocks are generally available, meaning all Eloqua customers have access to that. However, there are 4 other things that we want to walk you through as well. First one is the ability to hide on mobile or on desktop. I'll show you how that works. Also the ability to archive forms, that's a really important one. Most Eloqua customers have hundreds, if not thousands, of forms. Deleting anything in Eloqua generally is not the best solution, but then it does make things a bit messy, right? So Oracle are working quite extensively on an archive program to help customers with that and to manage the content better. And forms is the first cab off the rank. And it kind of makes sense to me that it would be forms, actually, because people using old forms can be messy and can be a little bit dangerous. So that's a great thing. So we'll talk about that. We'll also look at this function to export to HTML. And Remy, to your point, that's going to play into the shared content discussion. I'll show you that. And then also the YouTube and video app, which I can also show using that same page that we just created recently. So let's have a look. The hide on mobile and hide on desktop function is something that some more advanced users have been asking for quite a while in relation to the design editors, and it has arrived. Essentially what it enables you to do, and it works, the really important part is that you need to use it in concert with the mobile and desktop view icon that you see at the bottom of, sorry, at the top of the screen, regardless of you're an email or the landing page editor. And you'll see some things change on the left-hand side, but we'll jump in here right now and I'll show you how that works. And again, I keep jumping into that same page, but I'll show you what I did on this page. So on this particular page, we've tried to make it nice and spaced, lots of white space, some breakers, etc., a little bit more content, so on and so forth. However, if I hover over, go from full to mobile, there are some slight changes that have taken place. So if I go back to full view, you can see that I've got content sitting here, then a layout piece for the text, and then more content there. Now I found that when viewed on mobile, that vertical space was maybe just a little bit too much. So you'll notice over here that hide in mobile is activated. So if I turn that off and turn that off, And then if we go back to mobile, I probably should save it. Go back to mobile, you'll see now there's quite a bit of white space there. And so the beauty of being able to hide on mobile or hide on desktop is that you can really have a little bit more control over that. So you can see here that there's quite a large amount of white space, and that's because I've got the spacer sitting there. So again, if I go back here and now say hide on mobile and hide on mobile and hit save, you'll see that when we go back to the mobile view now, that white space has disappeared. So the other side of the coin is the shared content question, which I'll show you here in just a minute. So then you can see now that's gone. Those little pieces of content there, they're sitting in the other column, and that's by design. So, but the big white space has gone. The only other thing now potentially is to look at this content that you can see here, but that's shared content, and I'll cover that when we get to the export to HTML to show you how we've done that. Any questions on hide with mobile? Okay, is third-party tracking possible, such as tracking on YouTube videos, from Ahmed Khan? Ahmed, gut feel on that one is to say no, largely because of privacy reasons, I think would be the challenge. Eloqua can certainly tell you if somebody has clicked on a video and gone to YouTube. For how long they watched and what they did on YouTube, though, that becomes then a separate entity. The only way potentially around that, Ahmed, is to look at more proprietary-based video hosting platforms. So it might be something like if you use On24 as a webinar tool, On24 have proprietary platforms that you can use to store all of your video content, and there are other video management platforms as well that will give you that information that you're potentially looking for. Chloe asked a question about hyperlink underline. Can we change the underline color to a custom color without HTML code? Sure. Let me just quickly, so if I click on, no, don't do that. If I just click on something here, then click on the icon here. This is where I would add the URL in, for instance, to create the highlight. However, the styling for that color is here. So under the styling icon, you've got hyperlink defaults, and you can then set the color to whatever color you want. So hopefully, Chloe, that answers your question. And while we're looking at the landing page editor right now, it's the exact same experience and exact same function within the email editor as well. Okay, so Alexandra asked the question, I can't seem to find the hide on mobile. So, hey, Alex, how you doing? Okay, so in order to find it, what you need to do is actually click on a piece of content. And when you click on that piece of content, you should see it here under general properties. So size, background color, and then hide in mobile. So of course you need to be in desktop view to see hide in mobile. And then if I go to mobile view and click on something, the option then appears to be hide in desktop. So you can then control that experience between the two. It means jumping backwards and forwards, obviously, between the two views, full and mobile, in order to see your work. But that's how you access them. So again, make sure you click on the content so that it pops up. So another question from Ahmed. Can we have a different content for both desktop and mobile users, or is it only hide? It's only hide is my understanding, Ahmed. So what we need to appreciate, I suppose, is that if you have a super complex email that you need to have a whole bunch of different things happening on different devices, then maybe you need to think about doing that in HTML. So using the source editor in order to build that. Hopefully that type of email is not the most common type of email that you're building necessarily. However, we feel that for the vast majority of users, this ability to, and again, while I'm showing you this on on a landing page, it's the exact same experience in the email editor as well. So yeah, that probably just needs a little bit more thought into how complex those particular emails are and what it is you're wanting to hide and show, and desktop and mobile, etc. Remy, we'll get to you, don't worry. Haley says, on the hyperlink defaults, how can this be added across a series of emails? Okay, so that would come down to using templates, Haley. So so Haley's asking the question, if I go here, the solution to that is to add that into your templates. If you add it into your templates, then the user doesn't have to worry about it when they get here. But if you're creating emails, actually this one, so if you're creating emails and not using templates, but just accessing the generic Eloqua templates, then you're going to get the single generic defaults. So build those into your templates and then you're good to go. So you can see that's the default there. Unfortunately, there's no master location to adjust that default. Same thing. Okay. All right. So archiving forms. So the whole archiving process, as I mentioned earlier, is an ongoing project that the Oracle team are working on. And forms is the first cab off the rank. This is a pretty simple process. It's certainly not rocket science, but there are certain benefits to this, and these are just some ideas for you to think through as to, well, why would I want to be archiving forms? By cleaning them up and moving them off into an archive, it makes search a bit more efficient. People don't see hundreds of forms potentially. They may see a more reduced number of forms, because once a form is in archive, it doesn't show up in search results. So that's one benefit. The danger of using old forms, especially if forms are very heavily configured to do very specific things, especially if we start looking at CRM integration and those sorts of things. If people by chance go back and find an old form and think, oh yeah, that does everything I want it to do, but they don't look closely at the form processing steps, they could put themselves into a world of pain. So let's remove those old forms and get those out into an archive location. So it just removes the mess essentially. But deleting of forms is never really a good idea. Eloqua doesn't charge you for space, so you don't have to worry about it from that point of view. And sometimes it is helpful to be able to go back to a form, because remember, form submission data is always held in the form, so it's valuable to be able to go back and have a look at. But let me show you what this looks like. It's as I said, it's pretty simple. So if we jump into a form, and okay, here's one I prepared earlier. Here we go. So this is an old form you can see from 2015 in August. Looks like it was user group related. So don't need this form anymore. Happy for that one to go. So I can go to the File menu and select Archive. And archive the asset. And there we go, confirmation on screen that the asset has been archived. If I go to forms, back to the form menu, you can now see that there's an icon here on the left-hand side called Archive. And you can see that at Marketing Cube, we've not done a lot of archiving just yet, but it's on the agenda for us to do. And so that's where they will sit now. And so archive forms will still continue to function. So even if by chance there's some random landing page out there that has an archive form, that's fine. That's not a problem. It's just a matter of trying to get some sanity into the process. Because if you look, for instance, at all files here at Marketing Cube, and if I just look at, say, 2013, you can see there's all our forms for 2013, and then it sort of just gets crazier from there on in. And we're a small organization compared to some of you guys. So I imagine if you went through a similar process, you would see a much larger and a much bigger list than we see. So archiving with, as you see with forms, is the first cab off the rank, and others will follow. Let's have a look now. This comes back to your question, Remy. I promised I'd get there. So this one is now generally available, meaning everybody will have access to it, and that is the ability to export to HTML. Why is this helpful? So it's helpful in a few ways. It's helpful from a workaround point of view when it comes to dynamic content and shared content. Those two particular editors, as you know, are still the source editor environment, the old drag and drop. They're not the design editor finished. That's on the roadmap for that to be done, but we understand that could be at this stage towards the end of this year, early next year. So it's a ways away, but there is a great workaround for this. So just some key things there for you to understand and appreciate. Exported HTML does not include package images. It will always reference the images hosted in Oracle Eloqua. So if you're familiar with, why do I always forget, probably because it's an Adobe product, where you build your emails, etc., someone can throw it into chat for me, and you export to HTML. And when you export that to a zip file, it pops in the actual JPEG, etc. All of the different content is in that zip file. That's not the experience here when you export to HTML from Eloqua. It'll be URLs that always reference back to Eloqua. If you make changes to the exported HTML, thank you, Dreamweaver Ahmed. I just never get that in my head for some reason. So Oracle Eloqua content spans may not work outside of Oracle Eloqua. Now, generally, my experience is I'm not going to be making changes to the HTML. I just want to get it into another part of Eloqua and take advantage of the ease of building in the design editors. And Remy, let me show you what I mean. Okay. So in that example that I gave you of this page that we built, this section that you can see here at the bottom of the page, this whole section, that's shared content. So here it is. So what I did is I built it in a landing page editor, and you can see there's nothing else here except this particular piece. So once I'm happy with it, I'm happy with the way it's performing, all that sort of fun stuff. Check it on mobile. Yep, looks great. All I need to do is go to export HTML, like so, and the code appears right here in front of me. Now, the easiest thing I found is to just simply click on copy to clipboard. And so then what I did is I went over to the shared content library. And in the shared content library, shared content, you can see here, and here it is. It's called College Webinar Replay Page for Customers. And once you get into the shared content, you need to click on the source icon, and here it is right here. And so all I did, if I delete that and then paste, it's exactly the same thing. Hit save. Now, the reason I show you this is because when you initially do that, let me see if I can replicate the experience a bit better. Okay, so hang on. I'm going to delete all of that. When you paste, you can either save it, as I did down there in the right-hand corner, then it just closes. If you click on Rich and go back, you get these big ugly boxes. And you're like, oh, did that not work? It has worked. You just need to save it. And as soon as you go back to the page, or even if you just open the shared content again immediately, there you go. So the images are in place. So if you do see those big sort of placeholder blocks there, don't panic. Just save it, open it back up again, and you're good to go. So what I wanted to show you as an example was I felt that this piece here, when I look at the page, is maybe just a little bit too big on mobile. So what I thought I'd do to show you is while I'm here creating the content, I'm going to select hide on mobile. Whoops, I'm going to select hide on mobile like so, hit save. And then I'm going to export that, which I think it already set it to, but let's have a look. So export to HTML and copy to clipboard. Then back to my shared content. Okay, here we go. And hit my source button in the shared content. Delete what's there, paste in the new one, and then hit save. And then if we go back to the landing page, now the easiest way to do this, I can probably just refresh the browser, which will force through those changes. Look, the key reason or the key difference, as we said earlier, between shared content and blocks is shared content will always be a master. So it doesn't matter how many different landing pages I put this piece of shared content into, if I make changes to the master, all of those landing pages will then be updated simultaneously. So if I now go to mobile, you'll see there's much less of a space here, depending if you recall, but there was a much larger space there previously. So I've been able to make that change in the editor, export it to HTML, upload it, or not upload it, just paste it into the shared content for it to appear here. Remy, the example of this is, for instance, that while we anticipate, so what we do is we share this page with our client, we give them the URL, so their team internally, they can take that URL, put it in internal blogs or your resource centers to help their team get up to speed, or might have new staff come on board so they've got those replays to watch. Because we've utilized shared content, because we've utilized shared content here, it means that in 3 or 6 months' time, I can come back here, I can make changes to this. I may put in new calls to action, I may update it with specific information. Oracle may change things because there's a few links here to the Oracle website as well. Oracle may change those links, etc. So the benefit of me using shared content is that I can come in here and make those changes in the shared content library once, and then every single page that I've ever published will be updated simultaneously. So that's the difference between shared content and blocks. Because remember, with a block, as soon as you add a block from the block library to your asset, you sever the connection, and you're now in complete control of what you do with that particular block, as long as your user profile gives you the ability to do that. Patricia wants to know, can we export as a PDF? You can't export from the main Eloqua platform to PDF, but you can export insight reports to PDF, but I don't think potentially that's what you're asking, Patricia. So there is a neat little tool. Actually, we're going to run out of time here shortly, but I will, if I've got a second, I will come back and show you that. All right, so the last of those 4 items to show you is the video embed. So the new Vimeo and YouTube videos enable you the app enables you to basically take the URL from your YouTube environment and drop it straight onto a landing page. So it does give you some other options to add, which is great: alt text, autoplay, looping, and background color, should you need to. But again, you can probably see why I've used this page, because it kind of contains all these bits and pieces. But that's the content piece right there. So as soon as you click on the content piece, the video link appears. But the video is found here. So under your design content, you simply drag that in. So it's just a matter of pasting the URL in here. And once you do that, this is the finish you have. So you can provide alt text. You can set it to autoplay. So the autoplay means that when the person hovers over the video on the landing page, it will start to play. You can assign a background color. You can also choose to hide on mobile, etc. once we get that feature activated for you. We always use the auto fit, but you can align left or right if you need to. And of course, add padding and borders and all the regular features that you would expect. So that one's nice and easy. It's so simple. Straight to YouTube, straight to Vimeo, grab the share URL, drop it in, and you're done. It's responsive out of the box, and you're ready to go. Now, there's a few other things that you should be aware of, and some of those things impact your CRM integrations in relation to some app updates that have taken place. So for the Oracle Sales Cloud customers, key thing is the integration now supports events and campaign actions. So active, draft, and completed, and also campaign member functionality. So you can group people under the campaign area within Sales Cloud and import that group of people directly into Eloqua via segments. So that's a big step in the right direction. For our friends with Salesforce, the integration app can now check for email address changes before running an import. Now, this is a dream feature. This is just awesome. In the past, we've had some workarounds and different things that we've managed for customers to help avoid this scenario, but this is now natively built within the app. So essentially what this means is that your CRM user is looking at, say, my contact, Derek Bell. Derek Bell also exists in your instance of Eloqua at the same email address. The CRM user sees that Derek has moved on and gone to another company and chooses to change Derek's email address. Perfectly agreeable thing to do from a CRM point of view. However, what would then happen at the next integration point is Eloqua would see a new email address against Derek and create a second contact in Eloqua. So Eloqua would have Derek at the old email address and now Derek at the new email address, and one Derek's enough, I assure you. So we had some workarounds and some things that our very smart developers put together to help rectify that, but you can now that functionality is available natively. So that's a very good thing. Now, there are a couple of other changes also, and this will really only be relevant for those of you who are actively using the Facebook Lead Ads app, the LinkedIn Campaign Manager apps, WebEx, or GoToWebinar. This information is available within Topliners and in a bit more detail. The upside is essentially there's nothing that the user really needs to worry about. There's really nothing that's changing. Everything, we've been looking closely at customers who are using these apps over the last couple of weeks since the updates have rolled out, and we haven't seen any issues. So it's more of an FYI, just to let you know, and it's probably more an administrator type thing for you to be aware of. Alex, yes, it is great news. And I would, Alex, before you delete that beautiful form, let's just make sure that everything's functioning correctly before you get rid of it. But yes, yeah, essentially that's exactly what it will mean. Alrighty, so we wanted to help you, given that, and again, this could be Eloqua Zoom, Eloqua GoToWebinar, Eloqua On24, etc. It doesn't matter really what the platform is that you're using. These are your typical providers. These ones I've highlighted only that they natively, there are apps available to integrate with Eloqua, so that makes sense. So you can store your replays here if we're talking about webinars, for example. These two platforms are probably the two most popular ones. YouTube is free. Of course, you can pay and get more functionality, etc. But it's a great place to store content and make it easily accessible for people. Then I would say to you, the winner is actually a combination of the first two along with Eloqua. So the main reason for that is it just gives you much more control. And I keep flogging this little microsite we put together for our friends in Auckland University. So essentially, it enables you to manage the branding. It enables you to manage who gets to the content. And it enables you to deliver a far more personalized experience. And so you've seen this page like 25 times today. So we'll just, we'll skip ahead. And the point that I wanted to make too was, we covered this before with the export to HTML, but because you've got the flexibility with your Eloqua landing page to add things like shared content, that can be very helpful and keep the content fresh as well. So the video may age slightly, but if you've got other things on the page that just make the page look fresher and more current, that can be valuable. The other thing that we do is we also use shared content in the footer area of all of our landing pages. So that is another great way to keep that information up to date. So you can imagine when 2021 rocks around, I just go to the shared content library, I update one particular asset, and then literally hundreds of pages that we have live on the internet will now say copyright 2021. But it also means I can add updates to our privacy policy. If things change there, I can change the URLs, office address changes, those sorts of details, all those sort of things that you would typically have in a footer. You don't want to have to go back and update hundreds of assets. So shared content is a great way to create one piece of content and access it many times. So Josh says, we have been encountering issues with the Eloqua Zoom app. It doesn't seem to be allowing us to register contacts to webinar ID. I'm wondering whether you or anyone else has had issues recently in using the app. So I've not had issues registering people. Twice I've had it, the API call has failed in relation to who attended. That was a bit frustrating. I just manually then exported and uploaded the external activities anyway. So there was a solution, which was okay. But Josh, it may be worthwhile having a chat with our support team and we just have a closer look potentially, just see if there's any campaign canvas configuration limitations there. All right, so we're going to have a blog post coming out later this week, which will talk about this topic in a bit more detail. And I'll make sure we put a link to that blog post, if you like, into the email following our user group. Over the last 12 months, we've noticed that the people attending the user group varies considerably. The lion's share of people attending are marketing managers. So these are individuals who are using the platform. You're logging into Eloqua on a very regular basis, if not every day. And the things that we cover and talk about, hopefully in the user group, are clearly valuable to you. And we appreciate your input and feedback on that. What we've also noticed though, and we ask people this question when they join the user group, is how much they use the platform. And the number of people who are telling us that they don't use it but wish they did implies that their organization uses Eloqua but they don't. And this became very apparent to us about 2 months ago when we started doing these webinars to help you move your on-premise events to digital or webinar platforms. And we found a lot of people attending those sessions who were not Eloqua users, but these are other people within your business who could benefit from what marketing automation has to deliver. So what we've decided to do, and we'll have more information coming to you in the next month or so, is to launch a new webinar series called The Art of What's Possible. And so as we say there, it's a webinar series designed for the rest of us. And if you're in a position, and you may even be on the call today, and thank you for joining us, you're not logging into Eloqua, and you may not even have a login to Eloqua from within your organization, but you really just want to understand how Eloqua can help you and how marketing automation can help you communicate better with your prospects, with your students, with faculty, with all of your different cohorts, business partners, staff. However, Eloqua can help with all of those different things. The Art of What's Possible is designed for that particular group of people. And so we've mocked up a reasonably good mock, I hope, but have put together a microsite, which you'll see in the coming months. And this sort of just gives you a little bit of an outline as to what is the Art of What's Possible, what's it all about. It will be a subscription. So as long as you're subscribed to The Art of What's Possible, then you'll receive updates. If you no longer wish to be subscribed, you can unsubscribe from just that subscription if you choose to. We anticipate meeting potentially every 5 to 8 weeks. So it won't be monthly like the user group. And then once you get in, we're obviously not going to meet this deadline because that's the 28th of May. So this was just me mocking up some dates and sort of getting a little bit of a time frame as to what we think might work. And what benefit is there of having an aspirational type of asset and event like The Art of What's Possible without a quote from Oprah Winfrey? So I just thought I'd throw Oprah in there as well. But we'll get more information to you about that. I'm hoping that that will be well received. It may well be that you feel like you want to be a member of both the user group and The Art of What's Possible. And of course, that's completely fine. But if you're not logging into Eloqua every day, or you don't have a login, but your organization is using Eloqua, then The Art of What's Possible may be a great environment for you to have. These will be slightly different types of discussions. In many cases, I'm hoping you don't have to listen to me, but you'll hear more from two of our marketing consultants, Natasha and Marika. Both have had extensive careers in multinationals and a whole range of different organizations. These guys are fantastic at what they do. And of course, Adrian, our CEO as well. I've stuck my photo there just for recognition, but anyway. So, but look forward to sharing that with you. And you'll see, as I said, you'll hear about that from us in the coming months. So the last piece of today's webinar was really meant to be about what's coming, what's new. Well, all I've really got to tell you is the next release, 20C, is due in August. And so that pretty much wraps up today's session. There's a couple of questions here. We're just starting to explore the Zoom integration. I'm curious to know whether the Zoom plugin connects with a specific Zoom's user account or if it links to the company account. It links to the company account, Cameron, just to let you know. Also, for the person who indicated they couldn't see the video content block in their Eloqua, they may wish to confirm that they're looking under landing page. Oh, that's a really good point, Cameron. Yes, so the ability to add video is a landing page function and not an email function. All right, guys. Well, we're 12:09, bumper issue, lots to share today. Thank you so much for hanging around. We still seem to have most people on the line, which is fantastic. But if you do have any questions, I'm happy to stay online for a couple of minutes. Happy to answer those. But otherwise, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Stay safe, wash your hands, and hopefully we'll be back at the office within a month or two. So we'll keep you up to date on that one. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.